What's going on, guys? My name is sk0ls, and I wanted to make a video about Halo 5. And Halo 5 is really the first Halo game to come out to where I haven't had a personal stake in the outcome of the game. I haven't been personally invested in the quality of the game. And that's something that's pretty different for me, because even going into a game like Reach, which is a game that I really did not like at all and ultimately played very little, I was still really concerned with how that game was going to pan out, because the beta came out at a time when they had just shut off Halo 2, and all of a sudden, as a Halo player, my main Halo was gone. So I was super into how Reach was going to pan out as a game for that reason. And even going into Halo 4, with the community being at a really serious crossroads, I felt obligated to play that game. I was really interested in the quality of the game, because I felt like that potentially could have been Halo's last shot. So I felt like I owed it to myself and the community to get on and play as much as possible. You fast forward to the Halo 5 beta. I played the Halo 5 beta pretty extensively, and I knew pretty early on that unless things changed pretty dramatically on a core mechanical level, that Halo 5 just wasn't going to be a game I could get behind. And ultimately, I didn't see myself playing this game on any sort of long-term basis. With that being said, I don't personally enjoy Halo 5. It's not my style of game. It's not something that I enjoy. But I think this game is really different in the sense that I really want the community to like it, whatever it may be. I really want the pros to enjoy the game. I want the pros to find competitive settings that are exciting to them, that generate a skill gap that they see as viable. And I want new players coming into the competitive scene to really have a great example to look up to. And I want them to be really invested in trying to be their best and showing up for events and showing their support. And really across the board, I want that for everyone. I want casual players to really enjoy this game. I want montages to really get behind this game. And I think montaging specifically has been on a pretty severe downward spiral for the past 2 or 3 years. And I want nothing more for in Halo 5 to regenerate some of those higher standards and to get back on top of the montage game. I sincerely hope the community likes this game. Whether it's going to do all those things remains to be seen. And whether it's even capable of achieving those things somewhat is still somewhat of a mystery to me. I know for me personally, it's not something that I'm going to be participating in. I'm 25. I've played a lot of video games, and I know what I like. And unfortunately, Halo 5 doesn't fall into my category of liking it. Moving into the specifics of the game, I think the one thing that sticks out to me the most about Halo 5 is that you have this dynamic that's been brewing since Halo 4, in that you have your traditional arena-style FPS factors that build Halo, and you have all these new things that 343's brought in the quote-unquote modern-style shooter factors. And I think 343 tried really hard to make those two mesh with Halo 4. And I see Halo 5 as an extension of that, is where they're still trying to take bits and pieces of two fundamentally different genres within the FPS, within FPS in general, and they're just trying to cram them together. And I think really I'm at the point right now to where it's like, I'm not going to be satisfied with these newer Halo games, and I know it. So in my mind, if the best thing to do is to just eliminate the arena factors entirely and just go straight with a modern style shooter, if that's what they feel they need to do, then so be it. I would much prefer them committing to something and committing to one core concept rather than trying to keep one foot on both sides of the fence, because to me, that's what Halo 5 is. And if history has shown us anything about that, it's that it just does not work. And I think traditionally the most successful FPSs, arena or modern style or something else, have been good and stayed good because they stuck with one idea, whether that be something more mainstream or something more traditional. And I think that's ultimately what drives, in my mind, a lot of Halo 5's biggest issues. Moving into what I personally feel about the game, the number one thing that bothers me about Halo 5 is the 1v1 meta. And I'm not talking about playing a 1v1 against someone. I mean 1v1 battles within a 4v4 game type or a team meta. I think traditionally, not even in gaming, the 1v1 dynamic, the concept of engaging someone 1v1 is something that interests me everywhere in sports, in gaming, and especially in sports. I'm a really big lacrosse player, and that's really my one big passion in life. I played in high school. I had planned to play in college. Ultimately, ended up not pursuing it. And I play club when I can. I go and shoot at least twice a week. Lacrosse is something that I love, and the reason why I fell in love with that game is because I'm a Dodger, and so for people who aren't familiar with lacrosse, a lot of offense in that game, unless you're playing against some wonky ass zone. The offense is created by drawing a defender out, one player, running an ISO, and getting the defense to move, forcing the defense to move, forcing a double team, forcing someone to slide to you. And when you get the defense moving, that's when players become open, and that's when offense becomes available to you. So the process of beating someone in a 1v1 scenario in lacrosse is really the driving factor in pretty much every modern offense from a high school level to a professional level. And that's why I loved lacrosse so much. And that's a really long-winded diatribe about stuff that doesn't really relate. But Halo is the same way to me. I really am. That's what's so engrossing to me about Halo 2 is that the 1v1 meta in that game is so strong, and there are so many different ways. There's so many different levels of just a 1v1 battle. And that's something that I've always been traditionally interested in, is the outplay. And that's, like I said, it's not restricted to Halo, sports, anything, other FPSs, Call of Duty, Destiny. I love those big-time plays. And I think ultimately big-time plays are born out of using a strong skill set to its greatest advantage. And I think in terms of tools, in terms of skills, what that means to me is that you're performing an input, or you're doing a movement to gain an advantage or to achieve a reward. And a lot of times you're doing that when you're in a disadvantageous position, when you're down shots, when your back is turned. You use tools to complete a play or to make a play that isn't normally possible for most players. I think the driving force behind that is this dynamic between difficulty and reward. So you do easy things and you get a small reward for them. If you do more difficult things, then you get a greater reward for them. And I think, and it's really easy for long-term Halo players, it's really easy to get caught up in the button glitch scenario that inevitably gets discussed on my channel in every single video. You know, with CE and Halo 2, those things are so in your face. Backpack reloading is in your face. It's very obvious what's going on. Double meleeing is the same way. And it's just as worse in Halo 2. You have double shotting, BXR, BXB. You have all these quote-unquote button glitches, and I've tried really hard not to compare Halo 5 to those old-school games. And I think of something like COD, which the meta is much less significant because the time to kill is so much quicker. But you really have two core mechanics in terms of 1v1 fights in that game, and that's, traditionally speaking in Call of Duty, is that you have a drop shot and a jump shot. And to me, that is the border. That is the absolute farthest that you can go in a game in terms of defining what is a skill and what is a tool and what is a gimmick. And I think Call of Duty has towed the line for a long time on that and ultimately been rewarded. To me, in Halo 5, the biggest issue with the gameplay is that you have tons of tools, and I'm not gonna debate that. I think there's a lot of stuff you can do in this game. The problem is that it goes back to what I said. The difficulty factor provides too much of a reward. So you have these things that are insane. It's like winning a battle to me is as simple as pressing thrust at the right time. And yes, there's a situational play call there, your timing and everything. But ultimately, the tools for what you're doing, it's too easy and you're getting rewarded too heavily. And I think Sprint in a lot of scenarios is the same way. And that's a huge turnoff for me. I think Halo 5, in terms of skills and tools, has firmly crossed over the line into what I consider to be gimmicks. And I think that's really my biggest issue with the game on a personal level. Moving into a more objective and general sense, I think what I've seen pretty much every Halo 5 player complain about, from a casual to a competitive to a montage level, is that the maps are absolute garbage. And how I feel about the maps, I think first off, they don't look great in my opinion. But the number one thing I notice about the maps is that there's a ton of long range. There are all these in the maps I played in Arena. I did not play very much Warzone because it's not my kind of thing. I played a lot of 4v4 though, and the problem with the maps for me is that you go from these really long range Civil War-esque battles where players just line up and shoot at each other. They go down shots, they hide, and then they pop back out and continue this long range engagement. Conversely, you have a lot of these scenarios which are exacerbated by the fact that your radar is essentially your worst enemy in Arena right now. You have all this short range, which is essentially just a random fuck fest of button spamming and like freaking out. And those are really polar opposites in the grand scheme of things. And the problem with the maps is that there's no mid-range to facilitate a smooth transition. I don't think it's really fair to say there's no mid-range because absolutely there is. I think the transitioning between those really long battles and the really short battles is really choppy and ultimately destroys the gameplay on pretty much every single map. I think Halo 3 is a game to where the maps were laid out in a way that they're really smooth transitions everywhere. You have these long-range battles. Then you go to mid-range, then you go to short range, and you're extending in a really fluid sense. And I think the pit is probably the best example of that. You have a lot of angles. You have short range, you have long range, then you go to mid, then you go to short. And there's a progression there. And it made the gameplay, despite Halo 3 objectively being a much slower game than its predecessors, the gameplay still was fluid for that very reason. And I think the maps in Halo 5 really... how do I put that? I think they make the problems in this game more prominent than they need to be. And I think that really goes along with what I was saying about thrust and sprint, is that the maps do absolutely nothing to help what I see as the biggest problem in the core gameplay. The saving grace, the other side of that, is that Forge should be coming soon, and that there is the ability for DLC. And I think, while there might not be a lot of good maps now, or any good maps in some people's opinions, the potential to make good maps is going to be there hopefully very soon. And I think that is absolutely a bright side. And I'm choosing to focus on that. I'm choosing to be positive for Halo 5 in general because I know there are a lot of talented forgers out there. And I think some of my favorite maps traditionally, particularly in Halo 3, I know not a lot of people are big fans of Onslaught, but Onslaught is personally one of my favorite maps in Halo. And I'll probably get hated on for that, but I don't really give a shit. I think there's a lot of positive stuff to be looking forward to, and yeah, it's unfortunate that you have to pay $20 for 4 maps that may or may not be good, but it's a hell of a lot better than CE, where what you got was what you got, and thankfully those maps were good, or Halo 2, to where you really only have like 2 or 3 or 4 really, really strong maps, and you have to hope and pray that you can buy a multiplayer DLC disc, and when you install it, that the maps are something that you really enjoy. Overall, though, I think maps certainly are something that have stood out to me. I've watched a lot of discussion happen. I've participated in some Halo 5 discussion, and I haven't seen too many players saying that they really enjoy the maps, which is a problem because good maps have always been a staple of Halo, and I don't think that has anything to do with gameplay at all. A good map is a good map, and I think you go back to Halo C, you have Prisoner, you have Chill Out, you have these legendary maps. You go to Halo 2, you have Lockout, Midship Sanctuary, Warlock, Beaver Creek. You have legendary maps. Even on Halo 3, you have the Pit, you have Construct, Guardian. You have maps. Guardian is a map that everyone loves, except on there's kind of that like standoff dynamic to where they ultimately took out TS Guardian. But I think Guardian is a map that ultimately everyone loves, and I think Pit is the same way. Those are legendary maps. And then you've really gone through this lull to where we haven't had great maps. And I think were I a developer on Halo 5's team, the very first thing that I would have looked at is how the maps work within the core gameplay, and I don't see the matchup there. I don't see the logic behind the map design. I've been rambling about that rather long enough. I think ultimately the only things I want to say is that I think a lot of little things got cleaned up, and I think the best example of that is one of the number one things I complained about in my beta was that you couldn't see guns. You couldn't see them laying on the ground. You couldn't see them leaned up against the wall. You couldn't see them anywhere. And in Halo 5, they added this little glow outline to them to make them more visible. It's a minor thing, but at least seeing effort there, I thought was actually pretty nice because it wasn't something that I was personally used to with 343. There's also a number of little things that ultimately harm the game, and I think it's something that I referenced when I was talking about maps, is that the radar distance absolutely needs to be adjusted, because player speed, especially movement speed, sprinting, you're going. It comes down to a question of what's a reasonable engagement distance, and I think Halo 2 had a really great radar in terms of if you were in a power position, say you're on midship, if you're at a BR base. You can see someone pushing from car on your radar. You can see someone pushing from street. Those are reasonable engagement distances are visible on your radar. And in a game like Halo 5, there's no one in front of you, and then all of a sudden you have 3 dots on you in less than 0.5 seconds. And I don't think that promotes anything good in this game. I think having played a lot of old school Halo, your radar is your best friend, without a doubt. And in Halo 5, I felt like the radar was my worst enemy. Now, in terms of competitive play, obviously the radar, in my opinion, is going to be taken out. And if they don't, then that's another chapter that we're not going to get into. But it's those little nuances, those little inattentiveness when it comes to detail that really put the nails in the coffin in this game for me. I think another thing that I wanted to bring up just briefly was that the sniper, where handling has traditionally, that is over Halo's career as a game. I think handling with the sniper has always been something that's been exceptionally fluid to a degree, except for in a game like Halo 4, where it's just basically a toaster that shoots fucking Nerf bullets. But I think the handling of that gun has always been something that's been exceptional, and it's always been something that's actually been heavily debated. And I think the weird delay times in between switching, scoping in, and shooting, it just seems like one giant clunker. And I know a lot of people like using the sniper, and I think as a power weapon, it doesn't feel like a power weapon. Conversely, when you're actually shooting the gun, you can shoot like right here on the screen, and then you'll hit a head where my head is. The magnetism, the hitboxes, there is something wrong when you use that gun. Because whenever I used the sniper, I got rewarded with kills that I never in a million years, not on any other Halo except for Halo 4, would I have gotten a kill. And I think Halo 4 is a really good example of another sniper that in my mind was absolutely busted. Well, that's really all I had to say about it. I just want to reiterate one more time, Halo 5 is not the game for me, and it's never going to be the game for me, because the game on a core level just doesn't work. It's not something that I really enjoy, and I think I would prefer to spend my time playing games that I'm more comfortable on, that I think are objectively much smoother games. Halo 2, Halo 3, even a game like Destiny, I think it is a game that is more worthwhile to play, and I think towing the line on Black Ops 3 as well is something that I've been entertaining buying. But I want to be sad. I want to make a fucking fit and get all purist and say the Halo 5 they fucking ruined. Whether they ruin the franchise or not. I'm done having that debate. Halo 5 is going to be what it's going to be, and if you like Halo 5, then more power to you. I applaud you. I think that's great. I hope people really do enjoy this game. I hope the community at large finds something to believe in, pun intended. I think that would be great. Just because Halo 5 is not the game for me does not mean that it's not the game the community needs, and I'll let everyone else decide that for them. For me personally, though, it's a no-go. Like I said, really not too upset about it. Thankfully, there's a somewhat working version of Halo 2 online that's playable, and I think that's great. And I ultimately have to thank 343 for giving me that, even though it's been a pretty shitty road going down MCC, in that it's still not where it needs to be. But at least I have some alternative. I don't have to play Halo 5 to play Halo. And that's really what I want to say. I think, that's really about it. If you want to play Halo 2 with me, feel free to add me. Destiny, if you want to get a hard raid in, if you want to play Trials of Osiris, I'm more than happy to play with people. My gamer tag is sk0ls. I appreciate you guys watching another long-ass video. I hope I can get some good gameplay to put behind this. But either way, thanks for watching. You don't really need to like the video. If that's something that you feel like you want to do, then go right on ahead and do it. You do you, for sure. And I'll see you guys on Halo. Thanks.